It's the Pain Treatments That Work 2.0 online video series, and I'm your host, Phaedra Antioco. And today we have Cyril Bourke, who's going to be joining us with NES Health and talking about NES Health product and bioenergetics. So welcome, Cyril.
Hello, Phaedra. Nice to meet you this morning.
Well, you have such a diverse background as you began in the healing journey with your own pain and as a pain specialist. Can you share with our audience about that and how you got involved with NES Health?
Well, I went through many different things. I've got a background in engineering, actually. I was trained by IBM in computers and high-level electronics in the United Kingdom. So I, at that point, had no interest in healthcare whatsoever. I was in a totally different world. And I was involved in the offshore industry and the military and lots of different sort of high-level technologies. And only when I actually had an accident myself and had 2 fingers guillotined, that I then suddenly noticed failure in my own healthcare, and I found that the medical system weren't able to help me in a way that resolved the problem. They just kept masking conditions that occurred. In fact, nowadays, I show people the fingers and I've got a typical sort of engineer's hands, but you just can't really tell that these 2 fingers here were guillotined through between these 2 knuckles, and they were cut straight through there. Now, they were reconstructed in Singapore by a fantastic surgeon who was trained in the United Kingdom. But from that point onwards, my fingers were white, painful, a sense of dead. You really couldn't feel properly. Basically the system, the medical system weren't able to help me. They were attached, and that was as much as they were able to do. Directly after that, I started to go down with digestive tract failure and all sorts of problems that appeared to be nothing to do with my fingers. But after a while, I was eventually treated with biofeedback. And as a result of that, within about 30 seconds, my fingers became, shall we say, reconnected to my hand. The circulation came right back. As you can see by my complexion, my fingers were white, so it didn't match my natural complexion. They were very white, so to speak, like there was no circulation. And suddenly the circulation came back. Suddenly there was blood underneath my nails, and suddenly I started to get sensation. Effectively, the axon of the nerve had finally connected electrically. It had come back together and started the repair process. Now, it brought my sensations back, but something else dramatic changed. During the period after my fingers had been guillotined, my digestive tract went to pieces. I actually had ulcerative colitis. I ended up being categorized as Crohn's disease. It was getting bad to worse, so to speak. And the medical system offered me nothing other than very expensive drugs, which they told me I had to take for the rest of my life. A story that many of your listeners probably recognize. Well, within about 3 weeks of coming or having my fingers treated, suddenly my digestive tract started to change, and I had repeatedly tried to come off the drugs they'd given me during the years before, and every time I came off, I became very ill. And this time, suddenly, I came off. And I felt fine. In fact, I was better than fine. I was losing weight. I felt comfortable. I had energy finally. Emotionally, I felt much better. It was like something completely changed. Now, as an engineer, I was astonished and delighted. I went to see my gastroenterologist and said, look, you need to know about this. And I brought him the device and said, look, know about this. And he said, no, you need to keep taking the drugs. And no, we don't want to know anything about bioenergetics. No, don't want to know anything about it. This is how you treat, gut problems. Take these pharmacies. And I was very disappointed. I spoke to the receptionist, who obviously I'd been seeing in and out of the reception for 4 years. And as a result, she basically told me that he had over 400 patients on that one set of drugs. And obviously there wasn't an indication he was ever going to change that process. So I took it upon myself. I actually retrained as a pain management therapist, and I worked in various places around the world and studied. And then eventually opened a clinic in Western Australia, and then eventually Queensland, the other side of Australia, using biofeedback And in that second clinic, I came across the NES system, which Harry Massey and Peter Fraser had put together using information patterns. So by then I was experienced as a therapist using biofeedback, and I knew that the body wasn't just a chemical event. And bit by bit, I eventually went to the UK and became involved with NES, became a NES practitioner, and eventually ended up providing education as a NES practitioner and educator in Australia and New Zealand. And here we are now, quite a while later, and I am actually responsible for Australia and New Zealand as a member of NES's staff. And we're involved in the development of these technologies and continually providing them to practitioners and education. And most recently, we even brought it to the animal world, where we have vets using the same technology. And they're recognizing the same. They have a limitation on what they can do with pharmacy, but with the energetic and informational technologies of biofeedback and the NES information patterns integrated into that system, they're able to get a much broader group of change. And it's been surprising them, but it's wonderful to get support from them. So yeah, that's very briefly how I became involved with NES. I was an engineer and came all the way through necessity, like most people, and then was able to share the successes and understandings.
Wow. So what is bioenergetics? Could you explain what it is? I think a lot of people listening might not know.
Yeah, look, it's a phrase that refers really to bi, as in biology, etc. So our body responds to energy. Now, we on a daily basis are affected by our environment, okay? The sunlight, the seasons, the moon cycles, they all produce energetic fields. So do our homes, our computers, our cell phones, our emotions. They provide energetic changes. They literally change the way the heart imprints information into proteins that circulate around the body. There's a huge should we say, electrical interaction in the body. So from a NES's point of view, we provide a scanning system that's able to look at how our body is being affected by bioenergetic influences, things like the type of energies people look at from a meridian point of view, but also patterns of energy that represent how embryonics within the body function. So they're the triggers that create growth from an egg and sperm through to a cytoblast, all the way through to a fully functioning child. And we look at those energies because they're not just used in that process, they're used also as an adult. We want those energies flourishing so you function properly and continue to be dynamic. And that's actually really important to recognize, that your body isn't a fixed event. It's continuously evolving and operating based on the environmental and emotional events that we perceive. So we have to adapt continuously. So we're looking at that dynamic that occurs in the body through our scanning system, and that was a result of 35 years of research by Professor Peter Fraser. And that was put into a database with some algorithms, and we were able to then scan the body field, both locally in a clinic, or you could literally be anywhere in the world. We've developed systems now where you'll be able to scan from a mobile phone with one of our devices, or from your computer, anywhere on the planet. Scan will immediately go back to the practitioner. Practitioner can then review it, discuss it with you, send you infoceuticals, which are imprinted fluids with no toxins whatsoever. They're very special remedies manufactured in Florida and in the south of England. So we've got 2 manufacturing plants there where those infoceuticals are made and then shipped to the clients. And they're very different from homeopathy. They do not suffer any environmental, from the point of view of cursory energies, your mobile phone, things like this, having an impact on them. The NES infoceuticals have the information locked, absolutely locked into the valence of the structure, which means nothing short of a microwave oven would break them open. They even go through X-ray machines without any problem whatsoever. So the information patterns are locked in solid into effectively a saltwater solution. So there's no toxic component at all. And those patterns are deliberately provided to the body to, shall we say, correct corruptions in our natural body field that Peter was able to deduce from his testing. That's one line of treatment, and the other line of treatment is through the MyHealth device, which is a biofeedback device. I've got one here. And just about every nest practitioner are never more than an arm's length away from these things. They're fantastic. They've just changed lives all around the world. And Wendy Myers, who I know you're very familiar with, she's just an absolute advocate for them and loves them. And even Dr. Joe McCullough is now using one, and he's attending our training in September, putting 4 days aside out of his own work to make use of the Nest system. So it's a real validation that the Nest system is real and functioning, and practitioners globally are making use of it. So the MyHealth uses both electrical fields laid on what we call a global scaling process, which are very specific frequencies that up until the MyHealth device, these frequencies hadn't been used in therapy because they were locked away in the vaults, so to speak. The Russian military had deduced them, and the Professor Milo Wolf, who came to America and was involved in science for the Americans, he released the understanding of what global scaling was only in the late 90s. Professor Fraser and he got together and found they could induce these into electrical devices and place body field information over the top. So we had highly effective nodes of efficiency, frequencies effectively, providing the information patterns that Peter had worked out. And then we put them into an evolving biofeedback, which allowed the afferent and efferent nerves of the body to recognize them as their own information patterns and then immediately interact with them. So the body it is integrating with those patterns, which means they're even more effective than the information on their own.
I have a question for you, though, because of just to stop you here, and I do want to remind the audience that you're actually you're interviewing from the rainforest in Queensland, if we have any reception issues. But I wanted to ask about the science, because a lot of people, and I can just hear my clients saying this, it's energy. Well, what is that? So I want to ask you, is there science behind this? This is a newer, well, it's a field of science that's been out, but it's just becoming more prevalent. So can you speak to that?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of science. There's an excellent book that was put together, Decoding the Human Body Field. That is an excellent, should we say, summary of the journey that Peter made. And it looks at some of the material that he was working with, because Peter Fraser was a professor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And he was actually the founding professor of the college within Melbourne University. So this is in Victoria in Australia. So he was a very science-based professor, and he went into research after setting up the university. And he'd been looking at everything from kinesiology through to radionics and homeopathy, and looking at dilution and all these things that have been proven and established for over 200 years. And he was looking at why some elements worked and some didn't. And this is where he started exploring energy patterns and information that you could actually read out of the body. In the late 1990s, there was a device created called a space resonance transducer. It allowed him to start exploring specific tissue groups and doing comparative testing. And he did huge amounts of testing. And some of the work is also recorded in a book called Energy and Information in Nature. And you can find both of those books on the Nest Health website in their books area. For those who have a really passion for science and mathematics, the energy and information in nature literally lays out phase relationships and things of that nature. The closest you would probably ever see related to phase relationships might be looking at electrical waves, as in, you know, 3-phase, 2-phase, etc. From a conventional electrical field point of view, that's probably maybe somewhere you might start to recognize that energy can be provided on different phases of energy. And Peter brought that all the way down to very low level energies, and found that you could place information where phases sort of overlap. That's probably the best way to describe it. So, and he modified many classical devices that were out there, things like the Vega machine, which a lot of homeopathy practitioners are aware of. He looked at that and said, okay, well, some of these bits are really interesting from a science point of view. And he started modifying them and taking them apart and really taking it to another level. So he did huge amounts of experimentation with vials of tissue and things, doing comparative testing, and that's how he built up his database. And then
was Harry a driving force? Harry Massey, right? He had his own healing journey, right? He tried everything, wasn't getting better, and he worked with Peter on developing the formulas?
Yeah, well, Peter had developed an enormous amount of knowledge, but he applied it in an individual manner. So when he dealt with a client, it was dealing with that one client and creating formulas for them, specifically matched against the let's say the problems that they had, not based on symptomatic response. That we're literally talking about measuring energy pattern distortions. So he'd stepped beyond symptom alone, and that's important to recognize. The NEST system is treating the distortion in the pattern rather than being, or should I say, chasing a symptom. By resolving the energy, we see the symptoms resolve. Now, Harry was in the United Kingdom and he had suffered a very long period of chronic fatigue, but his mind was active and he was exploring energy. In fact, he explored virtually every form of complementary therapy he could over about a 7-year period. And he came across a paper written by Peter Fraser relating to information and energy. And it was back at the times when you had fax machines, and he wrote him a note and sent the fax off. And sometime later he got a letter back, and Peter had sent him one of his lecture notes, and Harry read that, and he actually created a website at that point and started saving information of this nature. Eventually they came together. In fact, they caught up in California. So that was about halfway around the world. So they both met there. And they decided that there was a way to move forward. So Harry helped Peter integrate, should we say, repeatability, modern testing, so that the practitioner who was using the system didn't need to go all the way back to Peter's basic work. It was able to capture information and then offer it to the body, see if the distortions were recognized by the patterns, and then apply the solution, so to speak, to fill the pattern in. Imagine it's a big jigsaw puzzle. We're throwing all the pieces up there and seeing if we're missing any, and then putting the ones that are missing back up. So yeah, Harry brought together a team of people, eventually creating NES Health. NES is an acronym, actually, Nutra-Energetic Systems. We all refer to it as NES. So, and really NES is bioenergetics. Now that's our role now, providing bioenergetic technology and support, both from a, should we say, a traditional area, from PMF, pulsed electromagnetic fields, through to biofeedback. And should we say, well, the TENS world started in the 1920s. So it has a very strong sort of history, which has been very much ignored because of the drive for pharmacy from the industrial process from about the 1930s. So everything to do with energetics and information has been muted since then. I was recently speaking to a dentist who was trained about 35 years ago. And when they trained as dentists then, they were taught the pathways, the energetics, where certain organs and other elements would impact on the teeth, and how, as a dentist 35 years ago, they were expected to understand how to maybe help the patient, not just drilling holes in their teeth, but recognize ways of supporting the teeth by looking at the whole body. Now, if you look at those same dentists, they're trained to drill and excavate the teeth with no understanding whatsoever of the rest of the body. They've been effectively turned into experts in one very small area. So energetics has always been in the system, but it's been perverted and hidden, certainly in the last 50 years or so, due to the drive of pharmacy. It's a very obvious thing. So energetics does have a long history of science, and there's an awful lot of material out there to review it.
Okay, and then you said, so I did hear Harry Massey speak a month ago, and he was really struggling with chronic fatigue, depression, and was he able to get full recovery through this system that he created, helped create?
Yeah, no, that's one of the great successes. You're remembering they were exploring it and developing the actual scanning system in a manner that they could, shall we say, provide to other practitioners. But yes, I think in the end it took about 18 months of experimentation, and Harry was very much the guinea pig on an awful lot of the remedies. Yeah, that's a process that we have to thank Harry for being willing to take that system and make it happen, and having the vision to support Peter in creating a system where you have his brilliance, absolute genius, brought together into a software program that really Peter's there supporting each practitioner when they come to do a scan and help their clients. Even today, when you do a scan, sadly Peter's no longer with us, but his mindset, the way he categorized things, the way he prioritized things, he's with you every day going, right, take this direction, let's look at this. And his lectures are there on every page for the practitioners to help with. So yeah, no, it's been a marvelous journey. And as an engineer, I've been very delighted to be part of that and supporting the development of my health and being able to help practitioners understand how to use the system and use infoceuticals. I recently did a masterclass for infoceuticals in Melbourne in Australia, where we had a group of practitioners who we were working through and doing more and more understanding and sharing new knowledge of how infoceuticals interact with the body.
Right, and I know Wendy Meyer spoke on here on this video series on detoxification and bioenergetics, and she was just sold right away. It helped her 2 herniated discs. And I like to be the guinea pig, and I did get to test this out. And I would have been a little skeptical, but when I held that remote and you did the reading, what came up was pretty spectacular. It was pretty spot on about what energetic blocks and issues I'm having.
Yeah, in fact, we've prepared it. We've got it on the screen here, and I was on stage with you at the time, and it wasn't a natural situation. I mean, it started about 7:30 in the morning, and we had a whole group of 50 or 60 people that were at Mindshare in San Diego, which was an amazing event. I thoroughly recommend anybody to consider attending that. In that breakfast meeting, you were very good enough to give us your body field, and we had a look at it. And this is the first page of the scan. In fact, let me just bring this across here. Hi. Okay, well, this is the scan that was actually taken of you on stage at Mindshare, we did that. I mean, it was in a very big public space, etc. So it probably isn't as natural as we might have wanted. Normally we do, let's say, a short conversation just before doing a scan, asking about what types of things have occurred, etc. And you were able to share with us you had a major car accident, which, you know, that obviously was in your head at the time, and that literally probably had an emotional response. You probably sensed some of the shock or events that occurred around that and some of the recovery period, because I know you spent some time in hospital, didn't you?
Yeah, so that was 8 years ago. And then this scan was done literally a month after I just gotten out of the hospital for a broken back.
Mm. Okay, so there's a big sort of emotional component to it, and that helps us, let's say, direct the scan, because your mind is one of the biggest things to control how your organs actually function. Your mind creates emotions which drive your organs. So if somebody's living in a sense of shock or fear or some driving emotion that constantly comes up, it distorts the way the organs function. So it's important to, when you have a patient, to do a scan, to have them focus on what is causing their disturbance, their upset, etc. The scan will then recognize what's happening in those areas. So we scanned you on stage, and literally just like that, in under 10 seconds or so, you had a visual, and this is the scan that we're able to share with you. So you now have a login at home, and you get to see the scan information that the practitioner was able to take. So this first page is what we call energy. It actually refers to energetic rejuvenators, and they're the phrase that we use for composites of information. Peter Fraser's database is vast, and when we do the scan, that whole database is effectively provided to the body, and the body then responds, and in that response we get to see what areas are distorted or don't have the level of energy that we'd expect, and what areas are missing. Then we can stack those together in predetermined treatment processes, and the ERs, or energetic rejuvenators, are actually programmed into the My Health device. So here's the My Health device, and one of these folders just up here is the ERs. So if I press the ERs, I get a long list of elements, and I can then choose. There's about 70 on the list, and I would treat you based on what we see in the scan. So you can now see on the middle of your chest or upper chest, there's one called ER11, which is related to the small intestine and the parathyroid. That's it. So if you click on that, box, here you go.
Right here?
Yeah, just click the blue, that's it. And now you can see, there it says. So EI3 is a code we use. It's energetic integrated 3, which is related to the small intestine, but it also has an impact on the parathyroid. Now you can see that a blue line has appeared from the fingertips going up in through the arms, through the shoulder blade, into the back of the neck, and into the cheeks at the front of the face. So this is the small intestine meridian, if you were looking for an alignment related to a meridian, but it's also related to energies that occur and interact with the parathyroid field. So these are energies that allow hormonal function and integration to the rest of the body. They're not the only things related to the ER11. There's actually an enormous number of things in the background, but they're the two predominant components that a practitioner would talk to you about. So how would we treat you? Well, we would provide the device to the body, and we would use the electrodes and run them up the hand and up the body, following that pathway. And the device literally will interact with the dermatomes of the skin, and it will stick to problem areas, asymmetric areas. It'll open up pathways. You literally feel energy moving around the body. Or if it was somewhere difficult to interact with, or the person didn't feel they needed it directly on the skin, because the device produces a very, very low PMF, a pulsed electromagnetic field, we're able to overlay Peter Fraser's information patterns into the PMF. So it gently interacts with the body field that literally is radiating from you, and we interact and we place those jigsaw pieces into the body, and then the body starts to flourish again. And it's a very straightforward process, very easy to do in clinic or at home. Even my children can treat each other without any problem at all. So it's a direct treatment using the My Health device. Now, the My Health not only can treat directly, but it can be used to scan as well. So if you had one of these at home, you could plug it into your computer and you'd be able to do a scan and it would go straight back to your practitioner. So, and the practitioner could then discuss those items.
Okay,
So
can you show that again? Because I've enlarged the screen, so if you could just show us. So someone would hold that in their hands for 10 seconds, and you can do a full read like you did mine.
Yeah, it would be plugged in for the USB cable. So it'd be plugged in and it would, so in this case, I've got it set on a menu, but if it was plugged into my software, we'd see some information on here that says that it's about to do a scan. And when you're ready, you press the button and then it would scan from this device. And it's only about the same size as a mobile phone. If you can see, well, it's a bit bigger than, like, phones seem to get bigger and bigger every year. So this is, this is about that size. So it can scan the body and it will take the information, send it straight through our portal, straight back to our database, and the practitioner then accesses it and is able to review the scan in the same way we're looking at your page just now. But the patient can also treat themselves on those ERs. So the scan gives you specific ERs, and then you're able to dial them in, just like dialing an application on your phone. And it would start treating you directly with information directly related to your scan. So we've just looked at one at the moment, which was the ER11, which was looking at the small intestine and the parathyroid. But if you were to press that white arrow to the left, it'll take you back to that main page, and you'll see the next one down. So if you go to maybe number 52, which is in the middle of your chest.
And that one, that shocked me that came up, because that's, boy, right where I crushed my spine. And I didn't know if there's any, you know, relationship to that, but boy, for some machine to hold something, it really was pretty amazing.
Well, if you remember my fingers, right? My fingers are in the extremities of the body, out there, and yet my digestive tract was immediately impacted, okay? So it's about the pathways that travel these areas. So we've been able to look at the information patterns that basically localize in those areas and travel out through meridians, and we're able to recognize distortions, look at the composites, the layers of information, and plan a treatment based on it. So you may still be suffering, for example, things that are influencing you in that area, and the device has said, okay, let's provide energy to that. So we would dial into the device ER52, you just press the button and start treating. You might even lie in bed and treat you down your chest. And what's really useful is you get that feedback, you literally feel it. You sense heightened sensitivities when the device is in an area that's important and the body wants to interact with it. It sticks to the body. Sometimes it feels almost like a fridge magnet. It'll just go bang and stick to you, which is quite remarkable. And that is another proof that you're an electrical being. Right? Magnets don't stick to things that aren't electrical and magnetic, and the device literally will stick to you. You feel it like an adhesion. It just grabs you, which is quite remarkable. And it's not related to differences like moisture on the skin or anything of this nature. You can test the skin, for example, and feel the whole thing is just the same, and yet you'll find pockets of information that the body wants to grab, and that causes the conversation with the device. The two start interacting and communicating literally. So we get wonderful responses both on and off body.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So we would work through in the clinic, we would work through those areas, or the client would work through them at home using their device, each of those that have come up on your screen. Then the next area we'd be looking at would be what we call infoceuticals, which are informational remedies. They're from a material point of view, they're a saltwater solution, and they're put together in a GMP factory, which is a pharmaceutical grade testing and procedures. And it's worth probably highlighting at this point that NES is not only an FDA registered company, but the technology is CE, the European standards. It's FDA, and it's TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration here in Australia, which is a very, very high standard of should we say, monitoring regarding manufacturing, shipping, documentation, usage, etc. So NES is a globally recognized manufacturer of medical devices, and the application of these devices is both in medical clinics as well as complementary therapists and various other groups using the technology in different ways, and it interacts with virtually any form of treatment. It doesn't get excluded because there are no toxins, and it's only ever providing a positive movement forward, which is ideal for clients.
Great, and that's wonderful that you do have FDA approval, because the FDA doesn't just let anyone sell something that says it's going to treat pain, and it doesn't. They need to see that it is effective, so that's great.
Talking about pain, we should actually focus clients on the idea and knowledge that we have a lot of research on our website, and one of those studies is actually a large-scale study looking at the MyHealth device specifically, treating a whole range of chronic and acute conditions, and the recovery rates and sense of change were phenomenal. You can have a look on the website, but it's called an outcome study. It was done in 3 different countries in Europe. It had somewhere just under 200 practitioners, I think, and somewhere close to 300 students or so, or subjects in the study. And they found in an initial treatment, it was over 80-odd% positive, and then with a follow-up treatment, it was, I think, 93% or something positive outcome. So we're talking about pain reduction, and not only just pain reduction or removal in a lot of cases, but it was accelerated recovery and function. People were getting much better function, literally regaining movement that they hadn't had in a very long time. So the device is proven in that study. So I definitely recommend people having a look at that. So that's the MyHealth outcome study that can be seen on the NES Health website. They're in the research and the clinical studies area. And that's the type of thing that is important for patients, because it's not just a basic TENS device that is ignored by the body after sort of 15, 16 minutes. The MyHealth literally integrates with the body, and you rapidly see changes. And we're seeing that not just in humans, but we're seeing it in animals, racehorses, all sorts of areas. So it's absolutely wonderful to work with.
Great. Now, do you feel there's anything else we need to look at the scan?
Well, yeah.
I want to go into treatments too, and what people, because I want people to get a visual of what to expect here.
Well, having a look at your scan is very useful, so thank you for that. Let's have a look at the one that says BFA, Big Field Aligner. So in the top left, there you go, that's BFA. Now, Big Field Aligner is what that means. And we tend to refer to those as gross energies. I mean, huge energies that interact with the body. So you can see that we use a color code here. So we use purple as like the very top end, purple or red. You can interchange between those two, but purple I tend to see as the highest level of distortion. Then you've got orange, which is the next level down, which is still a significant element to consider treatment. Now, if I get you to press, put your mouse over where it says Big Field Aligner and click on that. There you go. If you click on that, now it's opened up 4 areas. So this is another composite. It's made up of 4 different areas of information. They're all built into one remedy called BFA. But within it, it has compartments related to, in this case, you can see grounding. And I think most people understand what grounding is, related to getting back to Earth's energy levels. Swimming in the sea, getting down into the grass, and really trying to balance the energies out from that point of view. But then we have phase relationships. We have distortions that we can tell the difference between them. And we have what we call the magnetic polar axis, the vertical axis, and the equatorial axis. So these are energies that actually get skewed in an angle. And when you start looking at Peter Fraser's work, if you get to read Energy and Information in Nature, the book, it'll show you the type of changes that occur. So energy isn't just a fixed thing. It has angular, calculatable elements, and the difference between magnetic, vertical, and equatorial axis is represented in the scan. So magnetic polar axis tends to provide us with an indication, if it's seen in a long-term chronic condition, of hormonal style problems. That's a common place. It interacts with the physical compartments of the body. Then we've got the vertical axis, and it's your vertical axis that has come up and highlighted the BFA, because you can see that that one's orange for you. Now, that is normally seen in a chronic condition as something that's affecting structure, things like the spine, things that keep you erect. It would come up with cartilage, ligaments, things that keep you erect. And you've actually just told us you were lying in a hospital dealing with a spinal injury only a month before. So the vertical axis, if we were going to guess, we would say you're probably going to get a vertical axis distortion, and you actually have it. So in some ways, that's actually telling us, yeah, okay, it's confirming that your mindset was in the right space, because you obviously had the right view of your body, and that was one of the concerns you had about your spine, and it's right there in the scan. Now, we don't separate out the vertical axis. We can provide it as part of the big field aligner. So you get the benefit of all the other elements, but your body, as we know, will be pulling in vertical axis information and really trying to support that component. So that's wonderful. So we know that that would be one that we would have recommended to you. Now, if we press that white arrow back to the left, we can have a look at the drivers. So if you hit ED, that's energetic drivers. You'll notice there's a theme, ER being energetic rejuvenators, ED, energetic drivers. And these are 16 compartments based on embryonic process. Peter found that if he reviewed the body looking at those types of energies, and when he found distortions in them, if he represented that pattern to the body would then take on new energy in those areas. So the first one, ED1, that's purple with you, and that's the source energy. And that's an overall phrase that we use that really describes your capacity to bring energy into your body and to distribute it and use it. So in your case, that is at the time of the scan, it was very depleted. So we were able to support that by providing an infoceutical that you would take in water, just put some drops in water, and that would start providing patterns that allow the body to bring in more energy. And it's important you have energy, because that's going to have a cascade effect all the way through your systems and allow things to develop. So that would have been the first infoceutical. Now, what's really useful about the NEST system from a practitioner's point of view, and really that has a knock-on effect to the client, is you don't waste time, okay? If you notice, your eye is drawn to the purples. It's drawn to the orange. It says these are the priorities. The white ones are not a priority right now or at the time of the scan, so we don't spend any time looking at them. No matter what your symptoms, there's no need to look at those. Let's decide how we're going to treat you. So the next one down that's of relevance is ED3, the cell driver. Now, the cell driver helps the cells maintain energy, makes them more active, and it helps aspiration. It helps the removal of rubbish from cells, things of that nature. Things like if you have inflammatory conditions and things of that nature, that one is a good one to start removing rubbish, activating the cells, getting them as active as possible. And of course, that occurs across the entire body. The next one down is circulation, and that's one of our tools for removing rubbish from the body and things of this nature. So obviously supporting those three would have a great response to someone trying to recover from a condition. Now the next one down for purple is the driver. So that's a muscle driver, should I say. The muscles are used for storage, aren't they? We put, as well as activation and moving around and giving you physical function, but from a storage point of view, that's where we put minerals that we can have rapid access to. So things like calcium, etc., we can move in and out of the muscles, and we use the small intestine as well to distribute and make use of the calcium process, for example, as one of them. So in your case, you were trying to rebuild tissue, weren't you? And of course, we need to make sure you're getting best access to the storage areas and remove rubbish that may be stored in those areas as well. So it's activating the dynamic in the muscles, allowing things to come and go, and to provide those storage areas to the body. So from a treatment point of view, we would choose some of these and say, okay, we might do source and cell driver and circulation. And depending on what the rest of the scan says to us, we may or may not choose all of the purples. Sometimes we might review them and say, okay, let's give you maybe 3 or 4 of the most important ones. Our objective isn't to try and treat everything in one go. Even though we've got the information to say these are pockets that we can provide information to. As a nest practitioner, our objective isn't to try and sell you as much bottle as possible, but to be as effective as possible. So if you think of a driver as having a cascade effect, so the source supports everything else. The cell driver supports everything below that. Circulation, that's how you move things around. By supporting just those 3 alone, you're having a big impact on every other layer of the body. So you can now see some of the mindset that nests have put in place. So Peter Fraser is helping us. He's saying, have a look at these. If we have a look at the EIs, the energetic integrators, which is the box next to the drivers, we'll be able to look at how some of these energies integrate with the body. So if I get you to click on EI7, which is the gallbladder meridian, now it's got 2 names, okay? We call it EI7, integrator 7, because from Peter's point of view, he had a whole lot of information in there that may or may not have turned up when people looked at meridians. In his testing, he was able to prove that they had field information which was interrelated throughout the body. If you click on the brain, for example, so if you zoom in on the brain, you'll see that there's a couple of elements in there, and we're looking at individual components going, okay, these are related to this integrator. And if I get you to close that down again, using the minus button, there you go. All of these other elements are all interconnected. And if I get you to zoom in on the stomach, which is the one in the middle there, you can see that we're not just saying the stomach as an organ, we're actually looking at multiple areas there. There's half a dozen areas that we're looking at, and that allows us to compare them and see what type of knock-on effect things are happening in the body. And historically, we can go back and see, even if EI7 or the gallbladder meridian came up twice, in a month, we can look back and say, are the same elements being affected, or is it changing? Is it evolving? And we can go back and check detail within it, which is very useful from the practitioner point of view. If I get you to close that one down as well. So let's have a look here. And you can see there's multiple boxes on the body there. And the zeros mean that they're low-level distortions. When you look at the 1s, the 2s, the 3s, the 4s, these are the higher priorities. So as a group, this has become an important one for you, and that's why it says it's a purple. So we would provide that to you. Now, on the screen, if you look at the bottom left, it says Show Meridian. So if I get you to click on Show Meridian, now you can see the traditional pathway, and you can see how it goes up through the body, through the hip, and normally with a gallbladder meridian, if there's a distortion in there, you commonly get discomfort in the pelvis area and the hips, sometimes the lower back. It's just a commonality that occurs when we have patients who have this one come up. But you can see how Ness have provided both the traditional view of the meridian, and we're able to say, you know, the front, the internal and the rear projection of the meridian, but also Peter Fraser's work showing those little boxes. As a result, the client's got quite a lot of material to provide or the practitioner's got material to provide and educate their client, but the treatment process would be that one infoceutical called EI7, because all that information is provided in that one infoceutical, and they're able to make use of that in their treatment process. If you click on EI8, there you go. So now you've got another view. This is actually the liver meridian. And again, we've got integrator information, so you can click into those areas. Here, go for it. I can see you want to do it. Click there. So you can. There's multiple fields that are visible. Some are not distorted and some are more distorted. And in this one, you can see we've got a 0, which is saying, okay, this isn't relative. It's not a problem. But then it's seeing the lymph field and each of the others going higher in distortion levels. So we're not going to treat those individually, but we can see them as part of the composite. So if you close that one down again, you'll see on the rest of the scan, there is a 0, for example, in the top, and there are various 4s around the body. It gives us information, but one treatment process, that one infoceutical, EI8. And that's what it will say on the bottle. In fact, I haven't got a bottle next to me, but they're just little, hang on a second. Okay, so they just come in little bottles with pipettes. Very easy for people to use. So look at all the other areas, look at different areas. They look at pathogen information. They look at different mind conditions when we deal with shock, traumas and conflicts. They're all different areas that provide useful information. And practitioners all over the country can support clients, both supporting pain and discomfort and the energetics that bring the body back together. And that's really what we're passionate about. And as a pain management therapist, I used the system for 8 years daily. And I was seeing somewhere around 80 patients a week. And we were very, very, very busy. And tremendous changes. So, and this is why I've become a full-time member of NES, because it works, and that was the proof of the pudding for me to test it in clinic for 8 years. As an engineer and a science-based person, I was more than convinced. I was absolutely engaged in it, and the whole team globally supporting the practitioners is phenomenal. So, and I must say, very best wishes to the Florida office at the moment, as they've just gone through Irma, the hurricane. So they'll be all going back to the office and trying to rebuild what's needed to continue supporting. So best wishes to that team there at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. Can you tell us how this works? How would someone who's interested watching, they say, maybe I want to try this, how they get in touch with NES Health and how they can find a practitioner and what the process is?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two real main directions, okay? If you are in pain and you want to find a NES practitioner, if you go to the NES website, which is neshealth.com, if you go to the top of the page, you'll find it's a button that says locate a NES practitioner. So you just click that and you put your zip code in and your country, and it'll give you a list of practitioners. If you don't find someone in your area that you might want to visit, you can also click on our contact page, and you'll be able to ask for maybe a practitioner who may be able to do remote scanning with you, and they can arrange for a remote scanner to be made available. They're a low-cost device, a USB, and you can be at home and scan you from home or wherever you are in the world. The other direction is those that want to become practitioners using the system. And NES educate practitioners from every region, so you're able to take part in that, and we've got various ways of introducing you to the system, and I believe you've got some links that you're able to provide related to documentaries, because NES has produced 3 different documentaries: The Living Matrix, The Choice Point, and Supercharged, which is about biohacking. So all of those are fantastic documentaries, and you've got free access to them through the links that you're going to provide to them. Go to our website, and there's an area that says Getting Started. And from there, you can fill in a form related to wanting to find out more about being a NES practitioner. And no matter what your current modalities are, you'll find it fits in and supports what you're doing. And it changed my life. That's why I'm here today. And I'm glad to be able to share that with people.
Wonderful. Now, is there any licensure or restrictions on who can become a NES practitioner?
That's very dependent on what state you're in, what country you're in, things of that nature. So Ness will be able to discuss that with you, and give you some guidance as to what state you're in, as to what you can do, etc. It's such a broad thing, but effectively Ness don't use toxins or poisons, so it really takes it out of any of the shall we say risk component areas. So.
Okay, and what about frequency, duration, time? I did the scan, you read it, then you would have me order a nutraceutical, right? Does that look like one at a time? Do you do multiple? What is the time frame, duration?
Well, we'd probably, in your case, I can't remember what we did, but normally we would provide maybe 3 or 4 infoceuticals as a treatment. So then if there are 3 or 4 suitable and it was right, I mean, sometimes it might be just 1 or 2, depending on what we're focusing on and what the big picture is, so to speak. And at the same time in clinic, you'd be treated with the My Health device, or a client might purchase one and then use it at home, because it is a device that clients can have at home and use in conjunction with the infoceuticals. So you're treating the body in 2 specific manners. Depending if it's a very big pain problem, in clinic, for example, I might see somebody on a Monday morning and I might say, look, if we've had an incredible change, that's normally a warning flag to me, because if you've been in pain for a long period of time, I'm actually going to say, I want to see you maybe tomorrow. I want to see you tomorrow to continue this. And it might only be a 15-minute consult, but I want to be able to support any, shall we say, rapid change. The common thing that happens is somebody's got terrible back pain, they haven't moved in months, we release it, they think it's a miracle, they're doing star jumps in the car park going, I can't believe it. They go home, they mow the lawn, they repaint the bedrooms. By the following morning, they're going, and it's because the body is detoxing all the stagnant activity that's occurred in the muscles, and now it's telling them to slow down and hydrate and support that process. And our minds just go, oh, it's a miracle, I just want to run forward. So I might say, if it's a very significant and debilitating pain, we might say, look, let's see you for very short periods of time over the next week. I might see you 3 times. If it's something that is more like encouraging repair after surgery, and it's more easily sort of laid out, we might say, okay, let's see you this week. We'll do a scan and we'll treat you with the My Health. And then next week, we won't do a scan, but we'll do the My Health again for maybe half an hour and promote that process. And maybe after 3 or 4 weeks, then we'd repeat the scan to provide maybe another set of infoceuticals, so we can mix and match what's required for somebody. I had one patient I saw for about 8 years straight, once a month. He was an architect and he was never ill. He came in once a month for 8 years because he realized that if he had a scan and treatment, it maintained his energy, his health, everything. So some people use it in completely different manners, where they literally go, this is great, love coming in to have a scan, infoceuticals help me, and the My Health just drives my energy up and just opens all the pathways, and they function better. So every practitioner can provide a mixture or combination depending on the requirements of the client.
Okay, great. So it's do the scan, then you have the scan read, and you can either do a nutraceutical, or you can also do the Me Health device, which then would scan and work the body energetically. Is that right?
Yeah, look, we would open up the pathways with the My Health device, and then we'd use infoceuticals. So they're the INF.
Infoceuticals. Okay.
they've got information in, so they're infoceutical. We don't take them for nutritional process, so they're not nutraceuticals. There's no nutritional component. We're not trying to add nutrition to them. They get better absorption of nutrition, a better metabolic process, because by providing the right information patterns, the gut and the digestive tract and all the processes involved, they accelerate the movement of nutritional process through getting better information. So we actually see people get huge changes in their metabolic process and their nutritional uptake and all sorts by not actually changing their diet, but actually adding proper information, and it allows them to make use of those areas. So it's interesting how it all interacts. But yeah, they're infoceuticals, and we provide those. And to be honest, the infoceuticals are the mainstay of treatment. For 15 years plus, they were virtually the only form of treatment, and they prove themselves absolutely. To bring the My Health in, well, as they say, 1 and 1 do not make 2. When you add the My Health and the infoceuticals together, it makes about 5 or 6 on the scale, so to speak. You just get even more change. So don't try and say, well, I'll just do this or I'll just do that. Put them together because they work so well.
Okay, great. And there's tons of information on the link below, and they'll have some videos that they can learn more. And I appreciate you going through the scan so people can get a visual. Like I said, I went on stage, I held the device, and it really brought up all my issues, like all the stuff that I was dealing with. And it made me a believer. So that's why I have you here. So thank you, Cyril Bourke, for being here today.
An absolute pleasure, absolute pleasure. Very best of luck with the summit.